We welcome you in the Sam and Cole podcast, halfway through the preseason games for the Jaguars. Brought to you, as always, by Champion Cycle. Locations, where, Sam? The Beach.
Arlington
Mandarin.
and Mandarin. That's
Arlington. Right. So thanks very much to the guys at Champion Cycling for their support of the Sam and Cole podcast. Sam is, as we record this, has been back on terra firma in Jacksonville for approximately 12 hours because got back in the early morning hours after calling the game last night in the Meadowlands.
In fact, Cole, you follow me on Twitter, so I did. When I got off the plane early this morning, I recorded one of those.
Your Nimnik Sports Update.
Yeah, and we're standing there. It's, and you can tell, wow, it's the middle of the night there.
In the middle of the night, and you sounded like you'd been calling it. This is just a little bit behind this is a little broadcaster talk. Yeah, a little broadcaster talk.
Okay.
One of the things that happens, even if you make your living talking, as we do by and large, if you're broadcasting for 3 hours in a row, naturally your vocal cords start to dry out. They've been banging together a lot. You talk, very few people, let me put this, very few men talk for 3 hours straight without much of a break.
I like that.
Very
sorry. Men. I just like that.
And so even if you're drinking water as you go, you're going to get, at the end of the night, if you've ever heard a play-by-play guy and it's probably more proficient on radio, more obvious on radio because you have more of a crescendo, a little more volume and push behind the voice in radio, but also in TV. And at the end of the night, you get a little raspier. Well, when you travel on a plane, and what do they usually have? About 5% humidity in a plane, something like that?
It's equal to about, in a commercial flight, about 8,000 feet. So, yeah.
So not a lot of humidity, even if you're drinking water. So if you aren't really paying attention and you've heard a guy's voice in a lot of different pitches and states, you might not tell it. But as a guy who came up largely in radio before getting into TV, I'm sensitive to that. And I could have been like a CSI guy we got this video. We don't know when it was recorded. I can tell you when it was recorded. It was after he did a preseason game and then flew for 2 hours.
Yeah, well, I drank more water in the last weekend than I can remember. Part of it was in preparation for that. As you know, that's kind of one of the things you try to do in advance. And in addition, to try to stave off the effects of a Friday night in Manhattan. So,
well, you got to get your money. You only get 4 broadcasts here, Sam. You got to get and only 2 of them are on the road.
Three broadcasts.
3 this year, right? 3 this year. Right. So you got to get your money's worth.
In fact, this Friday night's game is national broadcast on CBS. So.
Yep. And the other addendum here is to let everybody know, for the first time, I think ever, since I moved to Jacksonville in November of '96, I watched this game not in real time because I was calling the Armada game at the same time.
The Armada game. Shame,
we were head-to-head, Sam.
They fell 1-0 there, but
1-0, and still looking for that first road victory. But I was calling that match, so I had to go back and watch it this morning, and did. Next week, by the way, will be the first home game that I have not attended since 1996 because it's a Friday night game, and I'll be calling a Bulls game as it opens, which to me, again, we can get into the Jaguars specifically. I think it's awful by the NFL to do that, to put preseason games on Fridays over high school games.
I agree with you, Cole, and I think they're partially sensitive to that after Labor Day, because I think in a lot of areas I don't think football opens this Friday night in a lot of states.
Well, okay, but after Labor Day, games are on Sundays. It's the regular season.
Right. No, I'm saying I think that they don't realize that this week, they realize everything. Let me preface that.
Yeah.
But they figured, okay, if it's just Florida or if it's just Florida, Ohio, and Texas, we can deal with that. But I think a lot of places are starting the Friday. Their high school season starts the Friday before Labor Day. Nonetheless, I couldn't agree with you more. the NFL breeds their fans through those who love football and go to high school football games. And as you mentioned, there are an awful lot of Bulls fans, for instance,
sure,
that would love to be at the Jaguar game, but they're not going to miss a Bulls game.
Yeah, and this is not going to miss a. If it was a regular season game for Bulls and a regular season game for the Jaguars, you might have different conversations internally for yourself to determine that. But I'm going where the money is, Sam, because I am first and foremost a fan of my bank account. Let's talk Jaguars, though. Let me give you my thought. There are 4 areas I want to cover here. They are Bortles, Jokel, rest of the offense, rest of the defense.
Okay.
And
your favorite topic,
my
Jokel.
favorite topic. So I thought Bortles not as good as he was the first game, clearly. I think I want to see more. He threw, that pass in the opener, the deep pass that was dropped was a beautiful ball. He threw a couple of balls that, physically they're good balls, but I think he missed some reads on some balls that he wound up holding to throw deep.
And I think, and you don't know because Gus Bradley has said we're going to do some unconventional things. So it may be that they tell him, hey, throw the deep ball here. Find out if your guy can get back there. Don't worry about what happens. But I believe Mark even pointed out on the broadcast that Clay Harbor the safety left him
wide open. And by the way, I think you can do, Sam, I think you can do some of those things to say, hey, you're going to throw it deep here if you've already got an established quarterback. If you don't have an established quarterback, I don't think you do that in the preseason. I'm not saying the Jaguars are, but if they are, I think it's the wrong thing because you've got to have Bortles saying, all right, I know where I need to go with this ball. Look, Clay Harbor's wide open. The double team went with that. Was it Hearns who went deep?
Hearns,
I'm going to throw it to on the deep corner, the deep out to Harbor, and he's still going to have a 25, 30-yard gain, or maybe more if he turns it upfield. So, not as good as he was the first game, but still looks fine. He looks like he's taking compared to last year, he looks better.
That year 1 to year 2 step.
Yeah.
What's interesting, Cole, is knowing going into the game, because as you know, you meet with the coaching staff outside of their regular press conferences, and they tell you things that they don't just tell that you can use in the broadcast. The Jaguars, because Julius Thomas is not going to play in the rest of the preseason, are not going to display most of their 2 tight end sets here in the preseason. So the Giants were able to defend a pretty conventional what they call 11 personnel, which is the slot guy, 12 personnel, which is the 4 wideouts. So Bortles didn't have that kind of flexibility that perhaps he'll have in the regular season. But I thought he read defenses. It's so interesting to talk to him away from the press conference and to also talk to some of the other offensive players, because without naming Jed Fish specifically, they say, look, last year we had kind of a hodgepodge of things when it came to our offense. This year, if it's 3rd and 27, we have a play for that. So when it's 3rd and 8,
there's an app for that.
Yeah. When it's 3rd and 8, depending on where it is on the field and the situation in the game, the players already know we have a play for that. This is what we do. At 3rd and 8, on our own 30 with 2 minutes to play, this is what we do. And so Bortles, you can tell, has bought into that big time, loves it. The other thing that I found out about Bortles now, and I think Gus may have said this after the game, is that he's much more disciplined as a professional athlete. And it's either the maturization from year 1 to year 2 or the influence of Nathaniel Hackett and Greg Olson. He, last year he was kind of all over the place doing a lot of different things, didn't really know how to be a pro quarterback. Now, gets up, has whatever meals and then meetings, and then goes and spends 10 minutes in the weight room, and then goes directly to the field and spends 20 minutes out there, and then comes back in for a film session. And so he has a real kind of quarterback schedule that professional athletes need at that level to be disciplined enough to be able to be fully prepared to go into the game.
And by the way, that's the thing that Greg Olson wanted to have wanted to get out of Blaine Gabbert and never could when Olson was the quarterback's coach.
Is that right? No kidding.
Yeah. He just couldn't. He could not get Gabbert to buy into that. So that's a positive sign. I also think from the offensive standpoint, before we get on to Jokel, I think from the offensive standpoint, I'm already more pleased with what they're doing with Toby Gerhart. It's, it didn't take long to realize Toby Gerhart is not the guy for the stretch play or the outside, zone. It's north and south, running up between the tackles. However you want to do that, fine. And I think Greg Olson and company have seen that. And listen, this is how we're going to utilize Gerhart. And if he's going to be your
guy,
if he's going to be your third down back and your short yardage guy, then great.
He's one of the guys that they brought in the morning meetings yesterday. And it's so apparent that he is so much more enthused about what's going on offensively. Smart guy, went to Stanford, understood that last year was a hodgepodge. But in addition to that, for the first time since virtually his opening carry of last season, he's fully healthy. And you can see that when he hits a pile, it moves. And that's why they got him. They didn't get him. They didn't get him to be Adrian Peterson. They got him to be exactly who he is.
Well, listen, go back and pull every play out of the Mike Allstott playbook.
Right.
From Tampa Bay, right? That's the kind of back that Toby Gerhart needs to be.
He doesn't want to be known as that.
I know it, but it's what he is.
But when he catches the ball out of the backfield and when he gets to the edge and gets his shoulders turned toward the line of scrimmage, he's got better speed than Allstott.
Well, sure, and the game is faster, but it's the same thing. He's a guy who, in the previous era, wherever you want to draw that line, would have been a fullback, and now he's a running back or a one back, but he's a power runner, and he catches the ball pretty well. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle, but he's a power runner, and that's there's a place for that in the NFL, even in this day and age.
Which, by the way, part of that place is why at the beginning of training camp, I wasn't sure that he was going to necessarily have a place on this roster if it didn't go right for him. But you can tell that with Olson and the philosophy of Gus Bradley on 3rd and 2 times yesterday and once on 4th and 2, they're running the football.
Yeah. By the way, behind Tyson Alualu.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that used to be a almost surefire pass situation for Jaguar football teams. Now he is the guy that they're trying to give it to in that situation and have confidence that he's going to get those 2 yards.
All right, Luke Jokel.
Okay, let's hear it.
I watched him specifically each snap that he was in there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is on TV, on tape. Couple of times, listen, he looks like a guy who's still thinking. He's thinking instead of reacting every time he's out there. He reached a couple of times. Was it better than the first play of last week? Absolutely. I don't think overall there was any dramatic improvement. He still doesn't look strong enough to me, and he doesn't look like a guy right now who is naturally playing the position. Again, I think he's thinking too much. So I think he's got a ways to go. Was he disastrous? No, clearly not. Although if you'll go back and look, there were some times at the defensive end, whether it was Ayers or somebody else over on that side, kind of gave him the old preseason veteran move, which was, let me get you one, and okay, I'll back off now. It's still an incomplete grade in the preseason on Jokel, as it is on all these guys. And I will admit I battle expecting to see something that would make him be a first-round pick if he was coming out right now, and he doesn't have that. And I should just stop expecting it. And I now need to put it against the standard of the most average left tackle in the NFL, and can he play at that level?
Can he play in the league? Here, Gus Bradley, about 2 hours ago, here are his comments after watching the tape. Quote, Luke played better, and I will tell you what he did. I thought he played better versus power. I think they're trying to go. I think teams are trying to go. They'll use speed, they'll use power and speed to power. But where he showed up last night, I thought where he improved was versus power. So that was a good sign. And I thought he just played overall, he got better. And then the whole offensive line, I thought Beatles had a solid game again. Wiz had a solid game. I think overall we were very good in protection. We did give up a sack with that first group, but there are something that we can continue to work on. I think our second level blocking out front with our offensive line can be improved. And with that, our running game becomes even better. So I couldn't quite put my finger on exactly what I thought about Joker, but I thought when Gus said that, I agreed with that 100%. He got better, didn't make a quantum leap, played better against power, and still is working on his technique in a lot of passing situations. As you mentioned, perhaps now he wouldn't be a first-round pick based on his production as a professional, but against other left tackles in the league, if you have a left tackle that is in the upper half of the league, then you are significantly better on the offensive line.
No doubt about it. And the interesting thing, too, is that I think from watching these guys, Wisniewski and Beatles and Jokel, none of those guys are really maulers.
That's right.
Now,
they're not a classic road grader like Linder is.
Or
Parnell
on the right side. The Jaguars are going to be a run right offense. Some teams are run or pass. Some teams are left or right, and you can kind of put them in there. And that there's 4 quadrants: run right, run left, pass left. They are a run right offense right now. Mm-hmm. When they need it, they're running to the right. And that's what gives them the best opportunity to make it happen. And if you run right behind Parnell and behind Linder, and you have Tyson Alualu lead blocking, and you have Gerhardt running, well, that's a physical combination. Those 4 guys are really physical at the point. And that's, I think, to your point about why they are more likely to run it on 4th and 2 or 3rd and 3.
Yeah, the other player that they've worked out in that fullback position is Tyler Shatley. I don't know if that's going to be a regular thing, but I will tell you that when Tyson Alualu is in there as a fullback, he doesn't look like just a defensive lineman who's running into the line, just hitting anything of the other color. He's specifically looking for somebody to hit and square them up and stop them at the point of attack. That's a mindset that you normally don't get from a guy that you stick in there like that.
You know what he reminds me of, Sam? You know when you see a fullback in arena football, and they're 280-pound fullbacks?
That's right.
A guy who ate his way out of being a running back or a fullback, but he's not. But that's the position he is. That's what Tyson looks like. I mean, he looks comfortable in the position. He looks big, but comfortable in the position.
He sure does, and obviously shows the kind of athletic prowess that so many guys in the NFL have at over 300 or whatever he's listed at 295. Can have that comfortableness coming out of the fullback position.
And he's always been able to play low, so that was, that really plays into that position as well. All right, defense. I could not have agreed less with one of the headlines written about the Jaguars defense in the paper, that the Jaguars, I think it was something along the line, Jaguars harassed Eli Manning into a poor performance. They didn't harass him hardly at all. Eli Manning just stunk it up.
Yeah, he didn't play well. It was like he was distracted by all the talk about his contract during the week, and he knew he was only going to play 20 plays and he was going to get out of there. But there were times where he was not pressured,
and still made terrible throws.
Right, threw it high, threw it in the ground, threw it to the wrong spot. And it's preseason, so I'm not going to put anything into that. But I did think that the Jaguars, what the Giants did do, which is something they haven't faced yet, is they came out in no huddle. Mm-hmm. And the Jaguars were able to kind of adapt to that. It wasn't just, no huddle, and they were like, oh, timeout, we got to do – wait a minute, we weren't ready for that. Yep. They weren't confused. A lot of that has to do with Puzzlesny and his maturity, 9th year in the league, settling factor. I talked to Telvin Smith yesterday, and it just was so amazed. I love that guy. He's just a great guy to talk to. And I said, what's it like to have him in there? Because, he had him basically the first half of the year last year. And in the first 4 games, they were bad. And then in the beginning, in the next week, they were great. After that, they were terrible. Yep. And then they kind of got back together at the end of the year. He said he has that aroma when he's out there that he knows what he's doing.
He smells like he's really on the ball.
Right. I just was like, that is such an unbelievable quote.
That's a great misuse of a word.
Right.
It's a good myth.
And I don't know if
had to be thinking aura, didn't he?
I don't know. I almost think, that Telvin's a smart enough guy that he actually thought that, that he said, it's not just what he says. It's not just how he plays. It's not just how he communicates. It's kind of the aroma that he brings. But it was really great. And
new from Calvin Klein, Puzzlesnik for men.
So I tell you what, they did get Jared Odrick back yesterday, and they also Roy Miller played. Mm-hmm. Talked to both of them after the game. Both of them, they said they came out of the game fine, felt good. Chris Clemens will play this week. They expect. Senderic Marks
doesn't want to.
Right. Yeah. Senderic Marks is. I personally think that they're going to put him on the 6 game.
I hope they do. I just feel like they're rushing him back if they put him in there on opening day.
I agree. And at that, I don't exactly know who would be at that other spot, but I will say that if they get 3 of those 4 guys up front there, they have and in their base defense they have Skuda and Puzzlesny and Telvin Smith. Then the defensive backfield becomes the question. Demetrius McRae is going to continue to have his knee evaluated, but apparently it was just a contusion, so he'll probably be back. But also across the back, you're going to see the rookie this week come in. You're going to see more of Craig Loston, who actually played very well. Josh Evans, I think they're asking Josh Evans to do more than he's capable of doing by learning both and being able to play both positions. But you'll see him back there. And Devon House and Aaron Colvin and Dwayne Gratz. I mean, when you got that many guys who are kind of cover guys, there are a lot of offensive sets that'll come to the line of scrimmage the Jaguars will be prepared for. And that's why I think you saw Skuda late in the game, in the third quarter in the game, because the Giants basically came out with 3 and 4 wide receivers virtually the entire first half, and he was never in the game.
So one thing on the defense that concerned me in the first half were some of the big runs by the Giants. It's not this is definitely a problem, but it's the first step before the tornado watch is sent up. Mm-hmm. There's an advisory out right now on the Jaguars' run defense. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that throughout the course of the preseason. And again, getting guys back in and getting them game fit and so forth.
Yeah, because Cole, if you go back and look at the tape a little bit as well, I mean, this is a team that's going to play a single high safety. They're not going to play that Tampa 2, not to get technical, but they're not going to play those 2 safeties that are the second line of defense. They're going to bring 8 guys to the line of scrimmage and say, all right, these guys are an island on either end, and we're going to stop the run. Mm-hmm. And we've got guys who can cover the tight end. So that's what they're going to say. But if somebody gets through that first line of defense, then yeah, you're right. Those kind of 26-yard gains happen.
All right, so Friday night, the Detroit Lions are in town. How are they going to stop Barry Sanders, Sam? That's the real question I have.
And what sort of effect will Ndamukong Suh have on that?
Barry Sanders, who was at my first date with my wife, by the way.
No kidding.
It was the Thursday of the Super Bowl here in Jacksonville, and I had acquired tickets to the NFL Players Party at the Salem Rug Galleries, and there were all kinds of celebrities and celebrity wannabes there. And
there were more celebrity wannabes than actual.
And there were a lot of there were some people who were there would only have gotten invited to this in Jacksonville as a quote unquote celebrity. For instance, Joe Zelenka was not going to get invited if the game was being played in New Orleans or Pasadena. But it was great to see Joe and his wife Rebecca there. Who were just wonderful people.
And by the way, I'm not saying that from a Jacksonville standpoint. I'm saying that most of those NFL player parties, there are many more celebrity wannabes
there are
than
people
there are celebrities.
Rubbing the shoulders. And so that was our first date. And among the people there, there's actually, I've got a picture somewhere of my wife, Barry Sanders, and I. And, I'm looking like it's Barry Sanders for crying out loud. I'm in high school.
By the way, who's an incredibly pleasant guy.
Very pleasant, and Very low key.
Yeah.
Very low key guy.
Yeah, he'd walk by a lot of people and they wouldn't recognize it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we'll rejoin you, and I guess we'll do one sometime on Saturday or Sunday, because I'll have the Bulls game, you'll have the Jaguars game Friday. I'll watch the Jags game on Saturday. Then I'll call the Armada match as they take on San Antonio at Community First Park on Saturday. And then Sunday, maybe give us a chance to catch back up and get it all under one roof as we get back with the Sam and Cole podcast. And after the third game, the first line of cuts, and we can talk about some of those cuts that may or may not come up and see what the issues are with some of the injuries as well following that game on Friday.
In about, and we're recording this Sunday afternoon, in about 4 minutes, Cole, we're going to know whether Davis Love is going to become the third oldest winner in the history of the PGA Tour.
Well, we know that Tiger Woods is not going to be.
Although Tiger, I'm watching it earlier today, and Tiger blade shanks it across the green on a chip, duffs the next chip, and then finally pulls his putter out and says, "What the heck? I'll try to get this on the green this way." 3 putts for a 7, bogeyed the next hole, and then birdied for the next 6 he played.
He's got a lot of his game back, the short game, and I'll tell you, I think there's something. Certainly, there's something mental about that with Tiger right now, but I think there may be something physical with that.
Really?
Anytime, because it's the short game, and because it's the fine motor skills. Listen, it could be as simple as confidence, but I think part of it too is I don't know if you ever. I took some medication at one point that had, I don't know, caffeine or something, and it really got me jumpy. And I went and played golf, and I could not for the life of me. And I'm by no means a short game magician,
right?
but I could not do anything small
motor skills
in terms of precision. So sometimes if your body's not right, that can affect that. And Tiger's had so many of these issues, and so you wonder knee, back, hip, whatever. If maybe it's not something physical in addition to the mental, because the large muscle groups were working for him this week. Although he didn't have to drive it all that often on this course, but
that's true.
Long irons and the 3 woods were looking pretty good.
And I think that it would be dramatically overstating the fact that Tiger's back because he was in contention. This is the Wyndham Championship. 6 of the top 35 players in the world are there, which means that 24 of them are not, or whatever the number was. So to win a major championship, you have to have it going all through your bag. And consequently, while I do think he'll win again, he'll win something like this, I don't think he'll ever win a major again.
I'm not ready to make that declaration yet, Sam, because I agree with you that he will win something.
Mm-hmm.
He's not
too
Ian
many,
Baker,
as you mentioned. Yeah, no, well, that's not true. That's true. Too many different swing changes and ailments in terms of physically, but I also think too many demons in that game.
You're saying he's had trouble with the 3 iron, huh? Was it the 3 iron that Elon had?
I think it was a 9 iron.
Oh, was it a 9 iron? He's having trouble with a 9 iron.
And if you read the Inquirer, his recent exploits should portend him winning at some point.
I think he should have embraced from when he got busted. I think he should have just embraced and gone heel, right? Just turn heel and be the bad guy.
Be the bad guy. Although, and I've said this before, he clearly spent $9 million and he paid off however many women that was to not talk. 15, 16. Whereas he should have let all of them talk, and he should have. No, I'm sorry. He didn't pay off all those women, the Waffle House waitress, those kind of people, the babysitter, but he paid off Rachel Ucatel, who was on her way to a press conference. And if you've ever seen Rachel Ucatel, who is considered, and I don't exactly know how you acquired this particular moniker, but she is called a New York socialite. What does that mean?
I think it means if you've convinced somebody with money to take you around places in the Big Apple.
So she's a New New York socialite. But if he had let her talk, there would be an awful lot of people who would have stood there and went, okay, I get it. I mean, Elin is a stunningly beautiful woman, you know, and by all accounts, as nice a person as you ever would want to encounter. But you know, I think a lot of people would have looked at Rachel and said, and then Tiger could have apologized, and then he could have moved on.
Again, I mean, it's just sometimes there's a reason Ric Flair had such a long career, right? You know, he turned heel, or the recently departed Roddy Piper. Mm-hmm. Be the best bad guy you can be, and you can, you know, from a PR, I'm not saying like you go out and become a bad person or whatever, but you know, it for Tiger, it's an image thing. It's sort of a brand thing. Mm-hmm.
And now he's nice Tiger.
Yes.
And
Scott Brown
when he makes a hole in one. Just smacking him on the head with his glove. I mean, this is Nota Begay, who's one of his best friends in college and remains close to him, said, I don't think he'll ever achieve what he did before being this nice.
Well, listen, we've said it before. The three most dominant individual male athletes of the last 20 years, 25 years, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, and Lance Armstrong, all have a reputation of having that streak in them. You know, Larry Bird had it. Barry Bonds has it. You know, you go down the list. It's rare to find a super nice guy who is just dominant in his sport.
Nicholas was gentlemanly,
but he had an edge.
But absolutely, and still does in a way. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's not like, you know, Jack now as a 75-year-old ceremonial player is as pleasant a guy as you'll ever want to talk to.
Watson probably would have been
the edgiest guy that I've ever talked to as a champion.
See, and now, right, he has made that complete transition because he doesn't have to be that guy.
He's a statesman of the game.
Yeah.
But, you know, Johnny Miller probably said it best when he said, look, major champions aren't chummy. We're not chummy.
Yeah.
We're not just chumming around. We got other things that we're thinking about rather than being chummy. And by the way, it appears that Jason Gore has about a 50-footer to tie here.
Yeah, we're just stalling here so we can get this into the podcast. If anybody hasn't been able to tell what we're doing here, this is called professional dancing by two broadcasters.
But I do think that whole, you know, there is an edge to it. You know, and you mentioned Lance Armstrong, and I have talked with Lance dozens of times, and I've had, you know, one-on-one, not interview conversations with Lance because I did some work for Livestrong for a while, and a friend of mine was one of their major fundraisers, and I traveled to Austin and met with Lance a few different times. And, you know, even in that situation where he was thanking people for the contributions that they made to, in essence, his charity, still is that guy. You know, still is that guy. And
McEnroe is another great example.
Michael Jordan the other day, Michael Jordan said he could beat LeBron one-on-one.
Right.
Now.
Right.
Not then, now.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm trying to think of like the nicest great player that I can think of off the top of my head.
Roger Federer.
Okay, Federer. All right, and I haven't spent much time around Federer. Jim Courier was fiery on the court when he was at the top of his game, but always great off.
You know, you think about
Duncan,
right? But you know, Arnold Palmer might have won more than 7 majors had he been kind of a jerk, but certainly brought a lot of people to the game. You know, you look at the 3 guys.
Michael Phelps has an edge, obviously.
Oh, big time edge. Yeah. Muhammad Ali was able to turn it on and turn it off, and was incredibly skilled. And Richard Petty, also known as the King or the Kang, one of those guys that the King, the Kang, and the greatest. That's Arnold and Richard and Muhammad Ali. You know, one of those guys that just ends up being more than willing to win 18 races in a year using an illegal or then undetected motor and not bat an eye. And by the way, Davis Love is your Wyndham champion at 17 under par. Unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
How old is Davis now?
51 years and 4 months.
Eligible for the senior tour.
Eligible for the senior tour, the current Ryder Cup captain, and now a PGA Tour winner. And by virtue of this win, puts himself from 163rd to something like 116th and puts himself into the playoffs.
Into the FedEx playoffs, which Tiger will not be in, by the way.
Tiger will not play. Had to either win or finish
solo second, right? Yep. Yeah. All right, that'll do it as we dance long enough. And if you can think of any really good, nice guy, great players, and I don't mean guys who were 3-time All-Stars, but I mean really nice, like great guys who are superstar players at the highest level, you can let us know by tweeting to Sam at Sam Kavaris or to me at Cole Pepper or both. You can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and on Stitcher. And if you like the podcast, go on iTunes and leave a comment. If you don't, leave a comment, but just make it short. And
thanks to, again, Champion Cycling for their continued support. Their 3 locations are Arlington, the Beach, and Mandarin. And Cole, go back to another era. Frank Robinson absolutely had an edge.
By the way, still did the last time I ran into him, too. And I've told you that story.
That's right. All right.
That'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.